We are making a custom Magic the Gathering cube, a set of 360 cards that are completely brand new to the game of Magic and meant to be drafted amongst 8 people. But what are we basing our cards on? None other than the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU. Since the MCU will keep expanding until the heat death of the universe, we have developed the Segmented Cube. This means there is a 120 card base set that offers powerful yet generic support for a wide range of archetypes, followed by 8 30-card movie packs that focus on the main heroes and villains of the MCU. In the future, as more Marvel projects come out, we can add more movie packs and add them to the cube in a modular fashion. Join us each Wednesday as we show off at least 30 of the newest cards we've been working on. And here's the next group now. Hello and welcome back to Magic Set Editor, or MSE, as we are here to show off the first movie pack, Thanos and the Black Order. This is a mono black set. This is the only mono color of our movie packs. This is Thanos and his Black Order, his 4 lieutenants, as well as a bunch of Chitauri. Because of that, their kind of gameplay loop is that they are an aggro deck, a mono black aggro deck that tends to go really, really wide, really, really fast, overwhelm the opponent with a bunch of small guys and some buffs on their characters to try and really push the advantage into the opponent's face to kill them. To do this, we've got 2 mythics as our build arounds for this set. Same thing with every movie pack. The movie pack rarity ratios are all the exact same. We've got 12 commons, 9 uncommons, 7 rares, and 2 mythics, rounding out our 30 card pack. One of the rares will always be a land in each movie pack, and there will be 2 mythics to build around 1 creature and 1 non-creature. This is kind of the format that we've set up for our movie packs to make sure that they're all similar enough that there is a structure to build around them. You know what you're going into when you pick a different movie pack. They're similar enough that if you pick one you haven't never seen before, you still have an idea of what to do. We've got Thanos the Inevitable here to kick us off for our Black Order as our mythic creature build around. He is a 6 mana 4/4 with 3 black pips. We really wanted you to be forced into mono black, or really heavily into black, in order to play Thanos. He is mono black. He is part of the Black Order. I don't really want you splashing him. He's a 4/4 with double strike and trample. Double strike here representing the twin sides of his giant double-sided blade, and trample here being him. He's just a big-ass dude, and he's just going to run through you, right? Like as we saw in Endgame, Thanos was able to fairly easily handle Thor and Cap and Iron Man, yeah, all at once. So that trample of him just like tearing through people definitely comes through here. He's got Chitauri you control, get +2/+2. Most Chitauri are very small in their power toughness, and so this buff really puts in a lot of work. And when Thanos is targeted by a spell or ability, Thanos gains indestructible until end of turn. This shows up later as like a bit of synergy with one of his cards, but this is also just Thanos being incredibly hard to kill. It seems like anytime somebody pulls something out of their ass to try and kill him, it does nothing, right? As the fight on in Infinity War on Titan, on his planet that we saw, anytime anybody tried to do anything, it didn't really touch him. When Loki says we got a Hulk, and he just like beats Hulk up without even using one of the Infinity Stones, right? Like this indestructible nature of Thanos also being inevitable with indestructible double strike trample, really putting on the hurt. So then coming up to our next mythic here, we've got the Infinity Saga. So this is a wall of text. I'm aware of this, but it's a saga. I had to do a saga. This is the start of one of our themes in this deck. There is a cycle in this subset, in the sub deck. So keep an eye on the mana cost here. It is 8 mana, 4 generic and 4 black. This is a saga, and this tells the story of the Infinity Saga. So at chapter 1 here, target non-Titan creature gains trample and has, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, gain control of target artifact that player controls. This is Thanos sending out Loki to go get the Tesseract, the Infinity Stones. On chapter 2 here, we have search your library for any number of artifact cards, reveal those cards, and then shuffle your library, put them on top of it in any order. This is Thanos going out and getting all the Infinity Stones. This also works in this deck. There are a decent amount of artifacts in this deck, mostly ships and vehicles. So you can still play this in the Infinity Saga deck, or in the Thanos Black Order deck, and still have it be relevant. And chapter 3, choose target opponent. That player discards their hand, sacrifices all permanents, exiles their graveyard. They still have a deck, but realistically, this is like they just lose the game, right? You have sacrificed all their permanents, including their lands. They have discarded their hand, so they have nothing on their hand. They have nothing, absolutely nothing on board, and you've exiled their graveyard just in case they had some recursion. You just completely wipe them. This is as kind of like a what if, right? This is a Thanos winning, right? Thanos erasing the universe completely and starting over anew, right? This is his plan. So this last chapter here doesn't actually happen in the movies, but it is his plan. So this is what we're going with. This is also this 8 mana. You do the chapter 1 on turn 8, then turn 9, then turn 10. This is assuming that you get it out on turn 8 with perfect mana, like to get you there with. There's not much ramp in mono black. Yeah, like this is very hard to pull off. The absolute earliest you're pulling this off is like turn 9 or turn 10 with a little bit of ramp. But realistically, in draft at that point, since these don't really like advance your game plan very much, this is one of your creatures gets trample, and if your opponent has an artifact, it's upside. And this is search your deck for any number of artifacts, put them on top of your deck. This chapter 3 is why you're playing this card, admittedly. The rest of these are kind of flavor. This chapter 3 is what wins the game. Realistically, this doesn't say you win the game. This says your opponent concedes because they're not going to play the game after that. This says win the game, which I'm totally okay with. If you get to 8 mana and fully resolve a chapter 3 saga, you deserve to win the game. Next up, moving on to our rares, we've got the Black Order. We've got Corvus Glaive, the Assassin. He is a 2 mana 1/1 with Skulk. I'm not a big fan of putting in keywords that are not evergreen or keywords that are specific to certain magic sets, like Skulk is. Skulk is a very specifically Innistrad mechanic, but the Corvus Glaive, it just works so well with him literally skulking around, stabbing Vision in the back, and then skulking and sneaking into the Wakanda headquarters to like Science Lab to then go stab Vision again. It just works so well with this guy that I could not do it. Also, whenever Corvus Glaive deals combat damage to a player, destroy a target creature that was dealt damage this turn. This works very well with the Black Order's kind of go wide effect. If you try to chump block any of the 1/1s with like a 3/3 or something like that, Corvus Glaive will get in, hit you for 1 damage, and then come around and backstab the guy that is in combat or engaged in combat with one of your little Chitauri. I think the flavor here is very, very good. Also, the effect, quite relevant. Next up, continuing our Black Order, we've got Cull Obsidian the Brute. He is a 4 mana 5/5 with Trample, which is very powerful until you see Cull Obsidian attacks each combat if turn. This is a downside, in air quotes, because like you kind of want to attack with him every turn anyways. 5 mana Trample on turn, like swinging on turn 5 is very, very strong. He's just a big dumb idiot. He's not cute, he's not tricky, he's just a big dumb dude. And he's a big dumb dude very, very well. So that's Cull Obsidian. Next up, we've got Ebony Maw, the Torturer. He's a 5 mana 2/2. When Ebony Maw enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card as him like kind of torturing Doctor Strange. And you can tap a non-land permanent you control to tap target non-land permanent. This is him using telekinesis to kind of fling things at other things. A lot of his telekinesis is used to trap people. And then we've got Proxima Midnight, the Soldier. 3 mana 3/2 with First Strike. This is very good on rate. And whenever Proxima Midnight deals combat damage to a creature, put a 1/1 counter on Proxima Midnight. This makes her very hard. The more combats she's in, the harder she is to beat, right? Between her and Cull Obsidian and the Mythic Thanos, these are kind of our biggest creatures. And they're very cheap for their cost, right? Thanos is 6 mana, but Cull being 4 and Proxima Midnight here being 3, very, very cheap for their mana in an aggro deck. Also, we get a nice little curve of these guys. Corvus Glaive being 2 mana, Proxima Midnight being 3 mana, Cull Obsidian being 4, and Ebony Maw being 5. All of them having double black in their cost. Nice little mini cycle there with some theming to them. And next up, we've got Sanctuary 2. So this one I'm very, very happy about. There is a card in Magic called Parhelion 2. It is an 8 mana 5/5 vehicle with crew 4, flying, vigilance, and whenever it attacks, you spit out 2 flying vigilance angels that are also attacking. The Parhelion 2 also looks like Sanctuary 2. Sanctuary 2 is Thanos' ship. So this is modeled off of that. And because a lot of Thanos' kind of goons use ships and vehicles and stuff like that, there is a lot of, there is vehicles in, like a vehicle sub-theme in his pack, which is where you can get the artifact searching from the Infinity Saga's second chapter. You can search up like Sanctuary 2, or you can search up some of the other vehicles or the other artifacts that are in this set. So for this card, we've got Spaceflight. Spaceflight is a mechanic that somebody who was making a Star Wars custom draft made up, and I really, really like it. Spaceflight is basically new flying. You can only be blocked by other creatures with Spaceflight. It's basically unblockable in most scenarios. There is going to be a couple Spaceflight cards in the core set that we have not yet seen. We have not yet shown off, I should say. And there's a couple Spaceflight cards in like the Guardians of the Galaxy pack. So Sanctuary 2 says, Swarm cost you pay cost 1 less. We have not seen what Swarm is, but keep this in mind. We'll come back to this in a minute. It's a very, very powerful effect. And whenever Sanctuary 2 attacks, you create 4 1/1 black Chitauri creature tokens that are tapped and attacking, and it has crew 4. So you can swing in with all the Chitauri. If you've got Thanos out, those are all 3/3s, just going crazy. You get the 5/5 swinging in at them. Thanos can perfectly crew the Sanctuary 2 with his 4 power, like that a lot as well. He makes the 4 1/1 Chitauri creatures attacking that are all now 3/3s because you still have Thanos on the board, even though he's not attacking. And then next turn, if any of those Chitauri live, which they're 3/3s, some of them should live, You can have them then crew the Chitauri or the Sanctuary 2 and have it go flying in with Thanos and just kill your opponent almost certainly. Sanctuary 2 here is an 8 mana card, so it does cost a shit ton of mana to get there. But once you get there, you really start taking over the game. If you can crew this thing basically once or twice, you should win the game, especially since it does 5 damage on its own attack. And this passive is nothing to sneeze at. Even if it just sits there on the board, this is still quite a strong card. For 8 mana, it kind of needs to be. Next up, we've got the Battle of Earth. So this is going in with another cycle with our Infinity Saga. These are the battles of that Thanos kind of takes to do his thing, right? There's 3 other battles. There's the Battle of Earth, the Battle of Wakanda, and the Battle of New York that kind of round out the Infinity Saga. And this is a 6 mana saga that is 3 mana and 3 black pips. You'll notice a slight drop from Infinity Saga being 4 mana and 4 black pips. This continues with the whole cycle. And this details the Battle of Earth. So on the chapter 1, target creature you control fights up to 3 target creatures you don't control. This is Thanos fighting Cap, Iron Man, and Thor, and also works really well with Thanos because when he is targeted by a spell or ability, such as the ability of this saga, Thanos gains indestructible until end of turn. One of the problems with having one of your creatures fight 3 creatures is that they get damage assigned to them and they'll probably die in the combat if you have them fight 3 creatures. Now you can use this to send one of your guys to just kind of suicide kill 3 other creatures, or if you use it with Thanos, he will live because he has indestructible, so the damage doesn't matter. And then he can start smacking the opponent for 1,000,000 damage. He's also this is also the same mana cost as Thanos, so if you do Thanos and then Battle of Earth, you can have Thanos gain indestructible. Thanos fights through your opponent's blockers. Then, since he still has indestructible, he swings in with his 4/4 double strike trample shit, and you probably just win the game on the back of that. I'm not gonna lie. Then on our Saga 2, we've got create a token copy of each non-legendary creature you control. Sacrifice them at the end of your next turn. So this is Thanos kind of showing up with all of his giant army behind him. He gets a token copy of all of your creatures, all of your non-legendary creatures, just doubling the Chitauri army, basically. The only legends here are the Black Order and Thanos himself, so you're just going to double everybody else. But then they all go away at the end of the turn as they get snapped. Also, if they didn't do that, this would be too strong, so that's kind of what this is for. And then on the Saga 3, creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. This will buff the creatures that you have made off of your token copies. Also, if you have Thanos on the board, your whole team, basically all your Chitauris, are getting +4/+3. That should be enough to kill your opponent, especially since you just doubled your board. This is a very powerful effect, but you do need creatures on board already in order to do anything with this, right? If you have nothing on board, it doesn't do anything, right? But it is very, very strong if you have a decent board already. Next up, we've got the Snap. We had to put the Snap in here. It's the Thanos pack. You can't not put the Snap in here. It is a 3 mana sorcery. You destroy half of target creatures target opponent controls rounded up, and you sacrifice half the creatures you control rounded up. This is, half and half. Delete half of your guys, delete half of my guys. I get to pick which half of your guys die and which half of my guys die. That's the kind of useful effect here. This might end up being a 2 mana card. It's currently sitting at 3 mana because most board wipes, or the cheapest board wipes, tend to be 4 mana. So this being at 3 mana is only half a board wipe, which is an argument for being 2 mana, but 2 mana to delete your opponent's best guys and sacrifice your worst guys seems quite strong in draft. So currently it's sitting at 3. And last for our rare list here, we've got our land. We've got Titan Fallen World and Titan Restored Paradise. This is a flip card. It is one of only a few flip cards that we're going to print in the set. When you play it on the front half, it is just a land. It enters untapped. It adds colorless mana because the world is a wasteland. And then you can sacrifice 3 creatures and you transform Titan with 3 Paradise counters on it. This flips it over to its other side, Titan Restored Paradise. This is Thanos sacrificing creatures and then trying to restore the world. It adds 3 black mana and you remove a Paradise counter from Titan. Then if there are no Paradise counters on it, you flip it back. So this is, we used too many resources and now we've gone back to a wasteland. The flavor here is it's very, very good. I really like the flavor here. Timeline wise, it's not 100% perfect, but you know what, we'll take it. This is the way to ramp out your Infinity Saga or your Thanos with this land. This land is not very useful in other decks because it only adds colorless. You have to sacrifice a bunch of creatures and then you only add a bunch of black mana. And now going into our uncommons, we've got Black Order Assemble. This is why we had to hyphenate Black Order. This is a 2 mana sorcery. Search your library for a Black Order creature, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. Black Order Assemble, a little play on Avengers Assemble, as we've got all the Black Order here. Black Order Assemble just gets your guys into rotation as soon as possible. Then we've got the Outrider Dropship. This is a 2 mana 0/3 with Defender and Space Flight. So this is a way to block other Space Flight creatures. The Dropship itself doesn't really do any attacking. It just deploys Outriders, and you can sacrifice the Dropship. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. This is when the Dropship kind of lands. It takes a really heavy beating and doesn't it just protects your guys, right? This is like the deploying, the protection, stuff like that. Next up, we've got the Outriders. This effect is quite strong. This should probably be a rare, I'm not gonna lie, but since the Black Order had to take up all the rare slots for all the creatures, we couldn't really squeeze these guys in. But this effect is too cool, I had to have it. This is a 5 mana 1/1. So you're playing a lot of mana for not very much. It is a Chitauri, so it does get all the Chitauri buffs from like being Thanos being on board, or other Chitauri buffs that we'll see in the future. But this is still a very powerful effect. The first time each turn, Outriders would take damage, create a token copy of it instead. This might get changed to create a 1/1 Chitauri, right? Because as of right now, when your opponent attacks you, you block with it, it takes no damage, and it makes a second one. This is what the Outriders do, though, right? Like they just overwhelming swarm. Proxima Midnight's here quote here: "We have blood to spare." Of the Outriders literally suiciding themselves at the Wakanda barrier. This is what they do. Next up, we've got Past Destruction. I really wanted to call this Blast from the Past because it is a funny pun, but also Blast from the Past is already a magic card that exists, and it's a red card and it doesn't do this effect. So we got Past Destruction. A 4 mana sorcery, destroy target permanent. If a land was destroyed this way, gain 2 life. So this can kill anything, but it kind of wants you to hit lands. Now, hitting lands is a piece of shit move, but there's not much land destruction in the cube. This is pretty much the only one I think that we have right now. There's not going to be much more, if any, after this. Also, it's Thanos, right? Like, you're Thanos, you're mono black, you're the bad guy. You're okay with destroying a land or two on the way out, right? Like, that's the point of this, the kind of like the embodying the aspect of it. I think it's fine. And next up, we've got the Q ship. This is another one of our vehicles. It is a 3 mana 1/4 with space flight and crew 2. So you have to tap 2 creatures, total creatures power 2 or greater. The vehicle becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. Whenever the Q ship attacks, another target attacking creature gains space flight until end of turn. This is Ebony Maw hopping up into the Q ship and flying off. And next up, we've got the Battle of Wakanda, another one of our saga cycle. It is a 4 mana card with 2 mana and 2 black pips. For 1 mana, on chapter 1, you create a 1/1 Chitauri creature token for each creature target opponent controls. As all of the drop ships beam down, you create a bunch of Chitauri matching your opponent's board. Then on chapter 2, each player searches their library for a creature card, reveals it, puts it in their hand, then each player shuffles their library. This is kind of Thanos preparing for the beam down that he does. Well, like he beams in with the Space Stone or whatever. And Thor kind of preparing for his beam down into the giant Battle of Wakanda, right? But then the chapter 3 is you may put a creature card from your hand straight onto the battlefield. So you get to tutor any creature, and then next turn, right at the beginning of your main phase, you slap it down on the board. Your opponent does not get the slapdown effect. They do get the tutor effect, but you get the slapdown effect. For 4 mana, this does a lot. This is very powerful, which is why your opponent, just like mechanically wise, balance wise, your opponent probably needs to be able to search as well. On turn 4, make a bunch of 1/1s. On turn 3, or on turn 5, add the best guy to your hand. On turn 6, keep getting the number off. On turn 6, slap it onto the board, right? For free. And then pay 6 mana, slap down a whatever you want. Like, slap down a 6 mana Thanos or whatever, right? Very, very powerful effect. Next up, we got the Other. This is one of our other legendary creatures, actually. A 4 mana 3/2. This is the advisor that kind of talks to Thanos for the first part of phase 1 and halfway through phase 2. Whenever another creature dies, draw a card and lose 1 life. This is whenever any other creature dies, you must draw a card and you must lose 1 life. In draft, this is a scary ability to put on a card. You are probably going to deck yourself or die. You're not going to deck yourself. You're probably going to die because if your opponent has 7 guys on board and you have 6 life, they can just swing all of them into you. If you block any of them and kill any of them, you lose 1 life anyways. And if you don't block them, you will die. So this is a very risky card, but it also comes with the crazy upside of drawing a card whenever anything dies. You get so much value off of that in draft formats where card advantage is king. You get so much card draw here, and just like killing your opponent's things, you go play +3. It's crazy. And all of your Chitauri you control have Death Touch. This includes your Chitauri creature tokens. This includes your Outriders. So this is a very, very powerful effect. This also curves perfectly into the Outriders. 4 mana for the Other, 5 mana for the Outriders. And rounding out our uncommons, we've got the Threshers. These are the giant land-destroying vehicles that are deployed during the Infinity War the battle in Infinity War at Wakanda. This is a 6 mana 4/4 crew 3 vehicle. It has non-basic land walk, and whenever the Thresher deals combat damage to a player, destroy target non-land permanent. So if your opponent is being cheesy with their non-basic lands, trying to get a bunch of mana fixing, Thresher can come slamming in there for 4 mana and then pops one of their things. This does have to do combat damage to the player. It destroys target non-land permanent, so you can't go after your lands. We're not doing a whole lot of land destruction here, just a cheeky amount of land destruction. Now, going on to our commons, we've got our Humble Chitauri Soldier, a 2 mana 1/1 with Swarm 1. This is where we're seeing Swarm. So all of our commons, almost all of our common creatures, and some even our non-creatures have Swarm. Swarm, as an additional cost to cast this spell, you may pay whatever this mana value is. In this case, it is only 1 for each Chitauri you control. Copy this card that many times. So this is the more Chitauri there are, the more Chitauri you get, right? This goes back to Sanctuary 2. Whenever it attacks, you create 4 Chitauri tokens, and all your Swarm costs cost 1 less to pay. So if you play your Chitauri Soldier after you already, say you've You have your giant Sanctuary 2, you swing out with it, you make 4 Chitauri Soldier tokens, you make 4 Chitauri tokens. Then on your second main, you can play Chitauri Soldier for 2 mana, and it costs 1 less on its Swarm ability, so it costs 0. You have at least 4 Chitauri out. You probably crewed it. Maybe you have more. You can just slam 2 mana like 5 1/1s. This is an aggro deck, but it is not an early game aggro deck. It is a mid game aggro deck. You kind of set up your board with a bunch of small guys, then you bring in the heavy hitters, then you bring in the Swarm. That's what this deck wants to play. So next up, we've got the Chitauri Gunner. This is a 3 mana 2/2 with Swarm 2, and whenever the Chitauri Gunner attacks, it deals 1 damage to any target. So the more of these guys that you've got, the more damage you can start throwing out. When you attack, you can just start pinging your opponent's blockers so you can get the 2 damage in, or you can just start pinging your opponent's face so that they die very quickly. This does not do a whole lot on its own, but in multiples in swarms, it puts in a lot of work. And going with our Chitauri Gunner, we've got our Chitauri Blaster. This is an equipment, another thing you can search off the artifact, searching part of the big saga thing. It is a 2 mana artifact with equip 1. Whenever equipped creature attacks, it deals 1 damage to any target. This is the ability that's on our Chitauri Gunner because he's got the gun, he's got the blaster. Then we've got the Chitauri Cruisers, a 4 mana 3/3 with Swarm 2, haste and flying. Whenever it attacks, it deals 1 damage to any target because they have the chariots and they also have the blasters. And speaking of, we got Chitauri Chariot. It is a 3 mana card with equip 1. Equipped creature gets flying and haste. So this is a very fun little like line up here that we've got, right? Chitauri Soldier, 2 mana 1/1. If you give it the blaster for equip 1, it gets the ability to pop things, right? The gunner, it gets a power toughness because it kind of needs to for balance reasons, right? But flavor wise, it then picks up the gun, gets that ability, right? Then the gunner picks up the chariot for another equip cost of 1 to go to our cruisers, right? 4 mana now, gets another 1/1, but it gets the haste flying and the pinging effect. Next up, we got the Chitauri Gorilla. These show up in endgame only. They are 5 mana, 3 black pips for a 4/3 with trample, and they have Swarm 2 to go with their generic cost. Just a big dude that you can play a bunch of. Because their Swarm cost is lower, they require much more black mana investment, which means you really want to be in mono black in order to be able to swarm these guys out. You can't just be splashing Chitauri in order to play this guy like you could with like the gunner or the other smaller guys. Next up, we've got the Chitauri Leviathan. So this is our 5 mana 2/3 with flying and menace, because not just one person can handle this. This takes multiple people to take on. Whether Iron Man is leading it over to Hulk to one punch it, that's still 2 people. I still call that a double block. Whether you've got Thor and Hulk on the back of it taking it out, that's a double block. That's a menace. So I think menace works really well here. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you create a 1/1 black Chitauri creature token. These things are also drop odds, basically. They hold the Chitauri on them that they can then spit out every turn. And with the Swarm ability here, if you can get multiple of these guys on the board, this stacks up fast. This is a common, so I don't want it to be too crazy. Commons typically shouldn't be able to 1 for 2. And since every upkeep you spit out a 1/1, it's every one of your upkeeps, so it's not infinite like a bunch of guys, but you do spit out a 1/1 that could like then block and like trade for multiple things. So I'm keeping it a 5 mana just for now. If the gameplay pattern demands this becomes 4 mana, just to be able to keep up with what the other decks are doing, then that might happen. But at least for now, I want to keep it at 5 mana. And next up for our first instant or sorcery, we've got the Chitauri Grenade, a 3 mana instant with Swarm 2. This is an instant that you can copy multiple times, right? Destroy target non-black creature. I think the flavor here is really, really fun. The Chitauri Grenade, you throw the grenade from one of your Chitauri. If you have a bunch of Chitauri, they all copy it and all pull out a grenade and throw it at your opponent. Next up, we've got Duress. So as part of this, I want to have one of our common or uncommon, typically instants or sorceries, just because they're easier to fit into this, be cards that already exist in Magic. This is because there's a lot of brain overload when you're looking at a bunch of new cards. So if you can see a card that already exists, you know what you're looking at, you can just kind of either skip it or add it to your deck. This is Duress. This is when Ebony Maw is torturing Doctor Strange. Target opponent reveals their hand, choose a non-creature, non-land from it, discard it. This is also the effect that is on Corvus, on Ebony Maw. His enter battlefield effect is just Duress. Next up, we've got the Sicarian Necrocraft. These are the guys that are under Ronin's control, the Sicarans. It is a 3 mana 2/2 with flying. Whenever the Necrocraft attacks, you may pay 2 mana. If you do, you sacrifice it and destroy a target creature an opponent controls. This is because the Necrocraft, halfway through the fight, start dive bombing the city. So this is them representing, they blow themselves up on your opponent, take them out. You don't have to pay some mana, you don't have to commit the attack, so your opponent has a turn or 2 to answer it. Then we've got the Sicaran Soldiers, a 2 mana 1/1. Whenever another creature you control dies, target opponent loses 1 life. These guys don't do a lot. They're considered to be paper people by Drax, but this effect is nice. It's useful. It's like half of the aristocrat sacrifice stuff. It's also whenever another creature you control dies, it's only your stuff, so killing your opponent's stuff doesn't trigger it. You don't gain any life off of it. So if you do any big pay life stuff like with the other, it's not going to gain you back that life. It doesn't like loop really, really well with the other intentionally. And rounding out our last card here, we've got the Battle of New York, our 2 mana saga with a 1 and a black pip, the cheapest in our saga list. So this one is a little controversial. So it is a on chapter 1, you create 2 Chitauri tokens. For on turn 2, that's quite strong. Then on chapter 3, you destroy, on chapter 2, you destroy target creature. Now, your opponent knows this is coming. So if you go first, you go land, your opponent goes land. You go land, you go Battle of New York, right? You make 2 guys, right? Your opponent's just not going to play anything because they know you're just going to pop it. And you do have to destroy target creature. It's not up to 1 target creature. It's not target creature you don't control. So if your opponent doesn't have a creature on board, you do have to destroy one of your own Chitauri. And then on chapter 3, you sacrifice all creature tokens you control. This does pop your own swarms. But because you're creating the 2 Chitauri tokens, if you don't play this on exactly turn 2, right? Theoretically, you play this on like turn 4, turn 5, halfway through the game. You make 2 dudes, then you pop one of your opponent's best creatures, then you can use the swarm abilities, right? Then you can really get out of control. So sacrificing all the creature tokens you control feels like it keeps it in balance. This might be unfun to play or play against. It's very polarizing right now. But that is our first movie pack. So this was the Thanos Black Order. These cards are meant to synergize with each other, right? That's one of the advantages of the movie pack. You can make them very highly synergistic because they can, you know what cards are going to be in the draft, right? There's a lot of cards here. There's 30 cards here. For a 40 card draft deck, you're not going to play all of these, right? You're going to play about 26 non-lands. One of the lands is in here, right? So even if you were to build a deck with only these cards, you wouldn't play every single one of them, which I think is fine because you're not going to be able to draft every single one of them. I'm excited to continue showing these off. Next time, we're definitely showing off one of the heroes, undecided on which one yet. So we'll have to keep you guys in suspense. Stay tuned for that video. It'll be coming out next week, and we will see you guys next time. Peace.